The girl who was fiercer than Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC. The biggest, baddest, most independent, and most desirable woman I ever knew dumped me for a werewolf, and then proceeded to get bored with him, too. I'm going to tell you about a crazy lady I survived dating back when I was at the very beginning of becoming a man in the late 1960s. I've been married 3 times, and all 3 wives got sick of hearing me go on and on about Victoria. She was definitely my great lost love, but I know she never loved me back. I used to sarcastically call her Queen Victoria because of her haughty attitude. She felt she was too good for any man, but she hated women, who she was dangerously competitive with. I don't remember if we even knew terms like women's lib back then, but I knew Victoria would not have wanted the label. She never felt that men had the advantage over her in life. In fact, she was pretty certain that they didn't stand a chance against her. Vicky was 6 feet tall when barefoot, and would wear these Batgirl boots with a little heel. I was 5'10", way back then when I could still stand up straight. So if she was Batgirl, I looked like Robin. I mean, she was big, and I was not as much so, but we fit together like hand in glove where it mattered to me. And for a little while, she was happy with me as well. When my ex-girlfriend moved out of town, though, Victoria dumped me. Turned out she was only making a big deal out of dating me to hurt my ex-girlfriend's feelings. I had played right into it, and I had unwittingly been really mean to someone who still cared about me. I never stood a chance against Queen Victoria. I lost touch with her for a while. There thankfully was no such thing as social media in those days. When someone went out of town, you talked to other people. It was a far saner time. Or else I'm looking back through rose-colored glasses. At any rate, when the Queen came barreling back into town and told me I could hang with her for a few days, I hung out with her. I knew I wasn't going to find anyone else as interesting as her to be around. And sometimes, I'd get lucky. So we were hanging together alone, having a private party under a tree in Forbes State Forest. At least I think that's where we were. The Queen did the driving, and I didn't often pay too much attention to where she was driving me. I was usually just looking at her driving me there. She was kind of my ultimate fantasy girl when I was that age. She looked like she had walked out of an issue of Fantastic Four, drawn by Jack Kirby. And she was not Sue Storm. She would have either been a bad girl or an anti-hero. More like, say Medusa. She was very glamorous, and yet scary tough at the same time. So anyway, Victoria drove us to the woods in western PA. It was either Laurel Ridge State Park or Forbes State Forest, but in either case, trees are trees, and we were sitting under a very large one. That whole area with those 2 forests is a long, mostly unpopulated range of hills in between 2 more heavily populated valleys. The 2 of us were enjoying what we thought was a private moment, and then bam! We were catapulted directly into our first ever cryptid encounter. It was also my second to last cryptid sighting ever, but I can't speak for the old girl, and she's not here to speak for herself. This werewolf looked a lot more like a real monster than Lon Chaney Jr. did in the movies. No offense to that guy. This was a wolfman or dogman, but I don't know how long it took for me to even connect those words to this creature. I don't think that while this was happening I said, "This is a werewolf," even in my head. I think I just freaked out, and I thought we were under attack from a hairy monster. I mean, yes, the monster did have a head shaped like a wolf or a dog, but this was the late 1960s. We didn't have a problem just calling things monsters. if that's what they were. Victoria and I saw a monster even taller than she was, and once it heard me gasp in fear, then the monster saw us as well. It came running right at us, and the two of us ran into the woods. Vicky seemed as frightened as I was, at least initially. We didn't know where we were running to, and soon we found ourselves clinging to some rocks sticking out of the side of a mountain. It sure was a long drop if we slipped, so moving back was impossible, and moving forward was quickly becoming the same. I decided we would try to climb down the sheer face of the rock wall. I didn't know if we could make it, but I knew the alternative was to get torn apart by that Dogman. I told Victoria I would go first and she should follow. She looked at me, then turned and looked at the fast approaching Dogman. Again, she turned to look at me. This time, she wished me good luck, then turned and ran back toward the huge steroid freak of a Dogman. I thought she was attempting suicide. I didn't know what to do, so I just stood there, watching. She ran directly up to the Dogman, and I couldn't turn my eyes away. Was I about to see a scene of great violence? No, the only thing that got bruised in those next few seconds was my ego. Victoria ran up to the Dogman, who picked her up in his arms and carried her off. Not in the way a movie monster would carry off the innocent female victim, no. He carried her away, like a bridegroom carrying his new wife over the threshold. I stood there stunned, watching them leave together, and I didn't even realize that my mouth was hanging open in surprise until a fly flew down my throat and choked me. The way the Victoria and that werewolf man melted into each other told me that this was not their first tango together. All the energy drained out of me, and I almost fell over backward into the valley below. You know, women talk about how harsh love can be, but it seems to mostly be the men who want to throw themselves off the mountains when the women leave. At least, when they leave in the arms of the Pennsylvania Dogman. I can't lie to myself. I don't really think it was a Dogman. I know it was a werewolf of some sort. It had to be. I saw them one more time together, but I did not get close enough to hear them. They were on a park bench at night in a city park on the southern edge of Pittsburgh. It's called South Side Park. Or maybe it was by the trail inn over there. Do they have benches along the trail? It's hard for me to remember. It's a long time ago, and I was spending a lot of time alone in parks at that point in order to cope with my severe depression over losing my girl to the manimal. It's not like it's something you can talk out with a therapist. My girl got stolen by the Wolfman. No, that's just something you have to keep inside and work through on your own. And then, one night, there they were, sitting under a park lamp, on a park bench. My girlfriend and her big hairy new boyfriend. It was the first time I realized how late it had gotten that night. In fact, there were crickets loudly chirping. It was quite dark out, and the place is not lit by the park lamps. He had one arm, one extra long Dogman arm, around her, in a posture like a normal human might have, and he seemed to be talking about something. I couldn't hear them from where I was, so I don't know for sure that he was actually speaking, but his mouth appeared to be moving, and his free hand looked like it was gesturing as he spoke. Sometimes he would seem to have finished expressing a thought, and then he'd look to her for a reaction that never came. It seemed that no matter what the monster did that night, his girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend, just kept sitting there, reading a paperback book with a bored expression on her face. I almost laughed. I still hadn't gotten over her, but she had already gotten over the guy following me, and this guy was literally a legendary creature. If she was bored by the Dogman, then I think I'm lucky I got away from her if you think about it. There's no way I could have survived someone who's such an adrenaline junkie that she yawns when a werewolf puts his hairy arm around her. This sort of voice popped into my head. It said something to the effect of, "When your girlfriend leaves you for a wilder man, it's time for you to get a more civilized girlfriend." I don't think it was Zeus or Mother Mary whispering in my ear. I just think it was common sense, taking a huge weight off my back. It was time to stop kicking myself for not being man enough for Victoria. After all, even a werewolf couldn't satisfy her. So I never saw that woman again, although people kept talking about her for years afterward. I never found out definitively where she ended up going, but I heard a lot of tall tales that people insisted to me were all true. There were rumors that she had become a dominatrix and went on tour with Led Zeppelin. I also heard that she went underground into manufacturing psychedelic hallucinogens, that she became a high-ranking CIA officer, that she assassinated pop singer Mama Cass, and that she later invented the mood ring. There was even a rumor that she died in combat in Vietnam. But I never saw Victoria again. Not outside of my nightmares, that is. In one of my dreams about her, the Dogman is giving her a tattoo on her arm that says, "Born to Lose." She was biting on what looked like a silver bullet as he created the art. In the dream, as in real life, Victoria never looked like fear or pain bothered her. That's because she was the girl who was fiercer than Dogman. The Zen Dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I have to say that I've seen a lot of incredible things in my life in Northern California, but the two strangest that I ever saw were the 15-foot-tall albino Bigfoot and the Dogman that I saw performing what looked like yoga, and also what seemed to be a mixed martial arts display, adapted to the physiology of the canine body. I know that the audience here is mainly interested in Dogman, so I'm just going to give you the condensed or shortened version of my sighting of the 15-foot Bigfoot. I was camping with my younger brother Mike at Whiskey Falls Campground, which is not all that far from some Bigfoot sightings some guys we used to know had back in those days. I was on high alert, but Mike was goofing off. He kept saying that the odds of us seeing a Bigfoot were next to none, especially since we knew other guys who had seen the cryptid in that same area. Well, I guess the odds caught up to us that day, as the hugest two-legged animal I've ever seen walked between some trees, allowing us to see it passing in the distance. It had to have known we were there. We were making noise and stinking up the area with our human smells. It never looked at us, but it walked where we could see it half the time, for about 30 or 35 feet. Or maybe a little more. I mean, how long must its strides have been? We found no footprints the next morning, so I can only guess. The thing was so tall. It was taller than two grown men standing on top of each other. It seemed like a 15-foot-tall ape, and it walked in a straight line looking forward. Although it was slouched a bit, it did not walk like a gorilla or a chimp. Its legs moved far more like a human being than anything else I can think of. Its posture was relatively good, although it did lose points for shoulders that slumped a bit. So although we've talked about it for years ever since, that's really all there is to our 15-foot Bigfoot sighting. The outstanding part was the extraordinary height, but other than that, it was a fairly standard sighting of a squatch that ignored us. My brother has said many times that if the Bigfoot had looked at us, that he would have fainted. When most people say something like that, they're joking. In Mike's case, I think he's underestimating. I think he'd actually keel over and croak if a 15-foot tall Bigfoot ever looked at him, albino or not. And that's why I'm glad he wasn't there when I had my next experience, which was with the Zen Dogman. I can't tell you exactly where this happened because I was coming from a farm for something that was once illegal, and the encounter itself took place on someone else's private property. So let's just say I was in the woods in California, hiking back towards civilization, when I encountered a scene that was simultaneously peaceful and horrifying. I was witnessing two graceful individuals perform yoga movements, usually in sync with each other. The sun was setting, and they stood on a natural ledge, performing their movements, seen by me in silhouette. The horror in the scene came not from the movements, but from the form of one of the two. While it was clear that the smaller individual was a human female, I had no idea at all what I was seeing next to her, performing similar ritual behaviors. Whatever it was nearly twice her height. It seemed too narrow at the waist to be human. Besides, humans aren't that tall, and they don't have pointed ears up on top of their heads. I mean, maybe Batman does. So maybe I was seeing Batman wearing a really tight girdle, standing in front of the setting sun. But it looked to me more like Marmaduke from the comics come to life, only now he walks upright and does yoga. I hid myself, sitting on the ground in a comfortable position, and watching every second of their yoga, as though I were seeing the most interesting program I had ever watched. And then, from 4 different directions at once, screaming men ran out and attacked the two figures, leading to a fight of silhouettes in front of the reddening sun. The largest figure spun around and I could see it was some kind of a canine, but a bear-sized canine. It seemed like a wolf, and it had bright blue eyes that flashed when it would turn in my direction. This creature battled using some form of martial arts that seemed to mix a great many styles. He battled the men who were all smaller than him, but larger than the human female he protected. She seemed ready to fight, but never had to. I witnessed enough to see that this was in fact a wolfman or dogman or werewolf or some kind of upright walking hairy animal man. It was not merely a canine standing on its hind legs. It had some characteristics that were more like a wolf, and others that were more like a man. Although it stood straight like a human, its legs really resembled a dog's legs more than a man's, and that gave it the effect of standing up on its tiptoes. The werewolf or dogman looked like it weighed 500 or 600 pounds, and you could hear its paws thudding into the ground beneath him. I don't know if I've seen any land animal move so fast, fighting off 3 or 4 combatants, all coming at him from different angles, and each being quickly followed by a replacement. The creature was clearly not human, and the more I looked, the less human he seemed to me. Still in all, he was using his paws and head as blunt instruments to fight off the advancing hordes. He was not using his long, sharp claws to tear them to ribbons. He was not biting them. He was not tearing their flesh, as he clearly could have been doing. While I was watching this fight, I kept wondering if I was seeing an outdoor martial arts classroom, or could this be a rehearsal of an ancient play? When it concluded, the woman and the huge wolf-headed bear man ran away. My heart began to truly panic. That was not a play. That was not a rehearsal. I didn't really want to think about what it was. I just knew that I'd better run from that sight just as fast as the dogman and his girlfriend were. I wasn't even in the mood for being in nature any longer, and I pretty much noped it out of there for home. I probably pulled the covers over my head, too. That's how scared I was. Seeing that dog thing battling all those men raised so many questions that I would never really want to know the answers to. I used to think that Dogman was a cryptid, and a cryptid was an animal that just hadn't been officially discovered yet. But that would not explain to me what I saw when that creature was doing yoga, then fighting off a bunch of martial artists. That was not a dumb animal. So what, or who, was it? Could anyone reveal to me the mystery behind the Zen Dogman? Dogman. Don't go anywhere. We've got another all-new allegedly true Dogman story right now. We'd like to thank Deborah Areola for buying us all a Coca-Cola. Please join us in thanking the kind and wonderful Deborah Areola for making this episode possible. If it weren't for true saints like Deborah A. joining our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com and our channel memberships right here on YouTube, we'd already have had to close up shop. There's some kind of new adpocalypse on YouTube. I think this one is the Plaidpocalypse, maybe? All I know is it's making me sadpocalypse, and that's why we're so grateful when brilliant philanthropists like Deborah Areola make direct donations to us using either our paypal.me/peterbernard209 page or else by using our handy dandy super thanks button under each of our videos here on YouTube. Or you can pick up our useful merch like our Dogman jigsaw puzzle. I mean, there are so many uses for that. Right, Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/peterbernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.